What truly belongs to you? Is it the wealth you accumulate, the status you attain, the people you love? We often live as though these externals were our own, clinging to them tightly. Yet Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who lived almost 2,000 years ago, gently reminds us that none of these things are really ours. Only one thing, he says, truly belongs to us: our ability to choose how we respond, our own mind and will. Everything else, the ups and downs of fortune, the actions of others, even our own bodies, is ultimately beyond our direct control. And in confusing what is ours with what is not, he warns, we invite needless suffering. To understand why Epictetus held this view so firmly, it helps to know the life he lived. He was born around 50 CE in the Phrygian city of Hierapolis, modern-day Pamukkale in Turkey, not into privilege like some philosophers, but into slavery. In fact, his very name, Epiktetos, means acquired or owned in Greek, essentially slave. As a boy, he was purchased by a wealthy Roman, Epaphroditus, an influential freedman in Emperor Nero's court. In that household, Epictetus had no possessions of his own. Legally, he was a possession. Even his body was not fully his. His master could do with it as he pleased. According to one story, Epaphroditus grew so angry at Epictetus one day that he seized the young slave's leg and began twisting it hard. Epictetus, voice steady despite the pain, calmly said, "If you keep doing that, you will break my leg." But the enraged master did not stop until a sickening crack proved Epictetus right. His leg snapped. Epictetus had fallen to the ground, his limb broken, yet he did not cry out. He merely looked up and said, with understated calm, "Did I not tell you that it would break?" The cruelty of Epaphroditus had left him permanently lame. Epictetus would walk with a limp for the rest of his days, but he never complained about it. Instead, he seemed to draw a lesson from that moment. Even under extreme duress, he could choose his response. His body could be chained or broken by another, but his will remained his own. Eventually, Epictetus obtained his freedom, shortly after Emperor Nero's death, and in the years that followed, he transformed himself from a former slave into one of Rome's most respected philosophers. While still enslaved, he had managed to study under the Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus, and once free, he began teaching Stoic philosophy in Rome. By all accounts, Epictetus was a captivating teacher. He had a sharp, sometimes sarcastic wit and a deeply sincere moral concern. He focused on ethics, how to live and cope with life's challenges, rather than on abstract theory. In 94 CE, when the Emperor Domitian banished all philosophers from Italy, Epictetus left Rome and journeyed to Nicopolis in Greece, where he founded his own school. There, in a quiet coastal city far from the halls of power, this man who had once been a slave taught students who came from across the Roman world. Even the Emperor Hadrian visited Epictetus in Nicopolis to seek his counsel, a remarkable tribute to the wisdom and inner authority of a person who began life in chains. It is striking that Stoic philosophy bridged such divides of status. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, and Seneca, a prominent senator and one of the wealthiest men in Rome, were also Stoics, at the opposite end of society from Epictetus. Yet all three found common ground in the same principles of inner freedom and self-mastery. In fact, Marcus Aurelius later thanked his mentor Junius Rusticus for introducing him to Epictetus's writings, which he studied deeply. Wisdom, Epictetus showed, is available to anyone, regardless of station. A slave could teach an emperor how to be free. Notably, it was largely through the written record of Epictetus' lectures, preserved by his disciple Arrian, that Marcus and countless others were able to learn from him. Arrian transcribed Epictetus' teachings in 8 books of discourses, of which only 4 survive today, and also compiled the Enchiridion, or Handbook, as a concise summary. Through these works, Epictetus' voice was carried across the Roman world and down through history. Back in Epictetus' own classroom, What was it like to learn from him directly? In Nicopolis, Epictetus likely taught in a simple stoa, a covered walkway or courtyard, where he and his students could gather daily for discourse. We can imagine him as a modest figure, perhaps leaning on a staff because of his lame leg, speaking in Greek with a calm but firm voice. Later depictions often show him with a crutch and a small lamp at his feet, symbols of the hardship he overcame and the light of understanding he offered. He had a talent for vivid examples, and sometimes a sharp sense of humor, but always his aim was to help his students live with more clarity and peace. It's said that attending one of his lectures felt less like acquiring theories and more like undergoing a kind of therapy for the soul. Sitting before his gathered students, Epictetus would pose fundamental questions. What is in our power, and what is not? What truly belongs to us, and what does not? These were not abstract inquiries for him, but the keys to living with freedom and peace of mind. Some things are in our control, Epictetus taught, and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion. In a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are our body, property, reputation, office. In a word, whatever are not our own actions. This opening declaration comes from Epictetus's Enchiridion, the short handbook compiled by his pupil Arrian. From the very first lines, Epictetus drives home the distinction between what we truly command and what we do not. In this stark dichotomy, he captures the core of Stoic philosophy. Our own actions, choices, and attitudes are up to us. Everything else, from the circumstances we are born into to the twists of fate that befall us, is ultimately not up to us. Notice how Epictetus classifies things like the body, property, and reputation as not in our control. At first, this might seem puzzling. Don't we control our own bodies to some extent? And don't we earn our reputations? But Epictetus is drawing a clear boundary around what we truly have power over. We can influence external things, yes, but we do not have absolute say over them. You can take care of your body with healthy habits, but you cannot guarantee you'll never fall ill or be injured. You can work hard and act uprightly, but you cannot force others to think well of you. As one modern commentator explains, Epictetus warns us against mistaking control over our individual contributions with control over the overall outcome. We often assume more control than we really have, and when reality doesn't bend to our will, we become upset. The Stoic insight is that by recognizing the limits of our control, we stop trying to take upon ourselves things which rightfully belong to others, that is, things outside our power, because doing so only guarantees frustration. Instead, if we focus on what truly is our own reasoned choices, we can meet life with grace. Epictetus put it succinctly, working within our own sphere of control makes us free, independent, and strong, whereas worrying about things beyond our control leaves us weak, limited, and dependent. If you pin your hopes on things outside your control, he says, you take on matters which belong to others, and you are liable to stumble, fall, suffer, and blame both gods and men. But if you focus your attention only on what is truly your own concern, and leave to others what concerns them, then no one will be able to harm or hinder you. In other words, by respecting that boundary between what is ours and what is not, we become unassailable in spirit. Epictetus promises that if we release our attachment to all things outside our control, we will find a profound sense of peace and contentment, as this is the path to genuine freedom and happiness. Epictetus often reminded his students that physical slavery was not the only kind of slavery. Someone might live in a palace and yet be enslaved by anxieties, desires, and fears. Conversely, a person in chains could be inwardly free. The true bondage, according to Epictetus, is being mastered by things outside your control, whether the opinions of others, the temptations of pleasure, or the dread of pain. Who then is your master? He asked. anyone who has power over the things you seek or shun. If you make your happiness depend on wealth, then those who dispense wealth, or the loss of it, become your masters. If you fear others' opinions, then anyone who can scorn or praise you holds sway over you. The Stoic aspiration was to escape this servitude. Whoever would be free, Epictetus says, let him wish for nothing and avoid nothing that depends on others. Otherwise, he must necessarily be a slave. In place of those futile yearnings, focus on what is yours, your own virtue and moral choice. Then no one on earth can enslave you, for you have made yourself immune to the fortunes of outside things. One technique Epictetus taught for maintaining this inner freedom was a kind of mindful pause in the face of any troubling impression. Work, therefore, he told his students, to be able to say to every harsh appearance, you are but an appearance, and not absolutely the thing you appear to be. Then examine it. Test it by those rules you have, chiefly by asking whether it concerns something in your control or not. And if it concerns anything not in your control, be prepared to say that it is nothing to you. Instead of immediately reacting to events or initial feelings, we should step back and remind ourselves that what we re-perceiving is not the whole of reality. It is only our impression of it. This practice of deliberately questioning our first impressions is what Stoics call the discipline of assent, the discipline of controlling whether we assent or agree to a given impression or not. In essence, Epictetus asks us not to jump to conclusions, not to automatically label events as bad or good, until we have determined whether they lie within our power to affect. Through this discipline, we gradually free ourselves from knee-jerk emotional reactions. Epictetus believed that our judgments are the true source of our feelings, not external events by themselves. Men are disturbed, he observed, not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. In other words, it isn't a casual insult from a stranger, or a sudden rainstorm that ruins our plans, or an unexpected job loss that truly upsets us. It is the meaning we attach to those events. If someone else's words offend me, it is my own belief that I have been insulted, and perhaps that I must retaliate, that causes my anger to flare up. If I am caught in the rain without an umbrella, it's my thought, this is terrible. My day is spoiled. That makes me miserable. When therefore we are hindered or disturbed or grieved, Epictetus says, let us never attribute it to others, but to ourselves, that is, to our own principles. This insight is strikingly modern. In fact, Epictetus's teaching here directly inspired what we now call cognitive behavioral therapy in psychology. The pioneer of CBT, Dr. Aaron Beck, noted that the philosophical origins of cognitive therapy can be traced back to the Stoic philosophers. Therapists often remind their clients of Epictetus's dictum. It is not events that upset us, but our judgments about events. Change those judgments, and you can change your emotional response. While Epictetus spoke often about accepting external events, he was no pessimist resigned to inaction. On the contrary, Stoicism is a very active philosophy. It is about doing the right things within the realm we control, and not wasting energy on what we can't control. Epictetus emphasized personal responsibility and effort. If something is up to us, our own action, our own character, then we should commit to doing it as excellently as we can. But having done what is within our power, we should then let go of the outcome. The familiar serenity prayer echoes this Stoic wisdom. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Epictetus would approve. As he advised, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will be serene. Instead of trying to force the universe to comply with our wishes, we adjust our wishes to fit the universe. This doesn't mean we become passive. We still strive for our goals, but we do so without attachment to a specific result. We make our best effort, and then gracefully accept whatever ultimately happens. The Stoics often illustrated this idea With an analogy of an archer, you can control how you draw the bow, take aim, and release the arrow. That is your part. But once the arrow is in flight, the final outcome, whether it hits the target, is not fully up to you. A sudden gust of wind might deflect it, or the target might move. A wise archer focuses on a skillful shot, then accepts whatever happens after. In the same way, Epictetus tells us to pour our energy into what is ours to do, our intentions, our effort, our virtue, and not to tie our happiness to the success of our endeavors, which can be influenced by many factors beyond us. By all means, strive to be healthy, do well at your job, and have flourishing relationships, he would say. But attach happiness to your own efforts in these pursuits, not to the uncertain outcomes. Live diligently and cheerfully accept what you cannot change. Let us consider how Epictetus suggested we practice this wisdom in daily life. He often advised starting small, using minor annoyances as opportunities to build resilience. Begin therefore with little things, he says. Is a little oil spilled? A little wine stolen? Accept it and say to yourself, this is the price paid for peace of mind and tranquility. If you call out to a servant and he doesn't respond, or someone fails to do what you asked, remind yourself that it is not in your power to control others, and that getting angry will only disturb your own mind. He is by no means so important, Epictetus writes, that it should be in his power to upset your mood. By training ourselves to shrug off these minor inconveniences, we prepare for greater challenges. It's like weight lifting for the mind. Gradually, we increase our capacity for patience and acceptance. Epictetus gives a famous example for handling small losses. If you have a favorite cup, he says, remember that it is only a cup. If it breaks, you can endure it. We should remind ourselves, when enjoying a cherished glass or any pleasant object, that it's fragile and temporary. Then, if one day it slips and shatters, we won't be devastated. We knew all along that its nature was to break. This simple exercise in perspective can later be applied to bigger losses. Indeed, Epictetus extends the same logic to our most treasured attachments. If you kiss your child or your wife, he continues, say to yourself that you only kiss a human being mortal and nothing of your own. Then, if fate intervenes and they die, you will not be overwhelmed. Classics, Menti. Adieu. These words sound stark, even cold, to us at first. Epictetus is not suggesting we love our family any less. Rather, he is urging us to recognize the truth of their mortality and the fragility of life. By keeping that truth in mind, we actually love more wisely and deeply, appreciating every moment, and we remain upright even under the heaviest blows of fate. In one passage, Epictetus imagines a conversation with someone grieving a great loss. Why, he asks, do we call it a loss at all? When something breaks or departs, isn't it simply returning to where it came from? He advises us never to say, I have lost it, but instead, I have returned it. Is your child dead? It is returned. Is your wife dead? She is returned. Is your estate taken away? Then it is returned, he writes, bluntly but profoundly. In this way, he reminds us that everything we have is ultimately on loan. We are like travelers staying at an inn. We may enjoy the room and use the bed and table during our stay, but when the journey continues, we must give them back and move on. So it is with the people and things in our lives. They belong to nature or providence, and eventually they will be recalled like possessions returning to their true owner. While we have them, by all means we care for them and cherish them. But we must do so without delusion that they are ours to keep forever. This outlook doesn't eliminate the pain of parting, but it takes away the poisoned barb of shock and injustice that makes grief unbearable. Loss becomes part of the natural order of things, something we prepared for and can accept with dignity. He never married, but late in life he adopted a friend's infant child whose family could not care for it. This act of kindness showed that Stoic acceptance never meant indifference. Epictetus cared deeply, and did what was within his power to help others. Epictetus himself exemplified this attitude in daily life. He lived in humble simplicity and was not attached to material things. One anecdote relates that thieves once crept into his house at night and stole his iron lamp. Rather than flying into a rage, Epictetus reacted with a touch of wry humor. The thief, he reasoned, was driven by an ordinary desire for a lamp. As for Epictetus, he decided he would simply replace his stolen lamp with a cheaper one. "Tomorrow you will find one of earthenware," he said dryly, implying that a person loses only what they have to lose. He refused to regard even this humble object as truly his. It was an external possession, easily surrendered and easily replaced. Thus, his tranquility remained unshaken. To some, such acceptance might sound like a kind of fatalism or detachment from life. But if you observe closely, it's the opposite. It allows one to engage with life more fully, with a whole heart, because you're not wasting energy resisting the inevitable. Epictetus's own life was anything but passive. He cared for others, he taught, he spoke out about virtue and vice. Stoic acceptance gave him the emotional poise to do all this effectively. He wasn't caught up in raging against things he couldn't change. He could channel all his effort into what he could change, himself and those he could influence through teaching. This is a powerful lesson for us today. We can ask ourselves, when we feel anxiety or anger, am I currently trying to control something that isn't actually up to me? Often, the answer is yes. Maybe we're obsessing over someone else's opinion, or dreading a future event, or wishing the past had been different. These are all unproductive desires, directing our strength outward in vain. Epictetus would gently redirect our attention back to our own sphere. How will you act right now? What attitude will you cultivate? Those are fertile questions that lead to growth, whereas fretting over externals is like tilting at windmills. We can almost picture Epictetus and his gathering of students, driving this point home with a mix of sternness and compassion. Perhaps he holds up a piece of pottery and asks, "Whose is this?" A student might answer, "It's yours, master." Epictetus might respond, "Really? Is it mine to keep forever?" "No, it's a cup. It belongs to its fragile nature. If it drops, it will break. So when it breaks, all that's happened is the cup acted according to its nature." The lesson sinks in. Our nature is to use our reason and choice well, and that alone is truly ours. In the same spirit, Epictetus cautioned his students not to let others control their inner state. If a person gave your body to any stranger he met, you would certainly be angry, he said. And do you feel no shame in handing over your own mind to be confused and upset by someone's rude words? The point is clear. Whenever we allow insults or provocation to drive us to anger, we are effectively surrendering our freedom to the offender. Your mind is your own. You need not hand it over. By withholding assent to the notion that you've been harmed or degraded, you keep your dignity and peace intact. Over the years, Epictetus's teachings have guided many toward an inner unshackability. By focusing only on what we truly control, we stop being pushed and pulled by every external change. This does not mean we become emotionless stones. We still feel love and joy, and even sorrow, but we do not despair, because at our core, we understand the rules of life's game. Epictetus liked to say that life is like a game or a drama. You don't control the length of the play or the role you've been assigned, but you are responsible for playing it well for as long as the director, fate, lets the play continue. Play your part with all your heart, he urges, but remember it's just a part, not ultimately up to you how long it lasts or what other actors do. In this thought, there is great liberation. No example illustrates the strength of Epictetus' approach better than the story of Admiral James Stockdale in the 20th century. Stockdale was an American fighter pilot shot down during the Vietnam War. He spent over 7 years as a prisoner of war, enduring torture and solitary confinement. What kept him going? Stockdale himself said that the philosophy of Epictetus was his guiding light in captivity. Shackled in a concrete cell, Stockdale remembered that Epictetus too had once been physically crippled, and yet had insisted that, although sickness or injury is a hindrance to the body, it is not a hindrance to your will, unless you let it be so. Lameness, Epictetus noted, is a hindrance to the leg, but not to your ability to choose. Clinging to such insights, Stockdale maintained his inner freedom and dignity despite extreme suffering. Likewise, the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, surviving the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp, observed that while everything can be taken from a person, the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, a truth that echoes Epictetus' teachings. These real-world examples show that the Stoic principles Epictetus taught can empower the human spirit to withstand even the most brutal conditions. For most of us, thankfully, life's challenges are far less extreme, but Epictetus' advice is just as useful in the everyday sphere. The same principles can help us handle common frustrations with grace. Imagine, for instance, you're caught in a terrible traffic jam that makes you late to an important meeting. The cars inch forward, and you feel stress and anger rising. At such a moment, you can remember Epictetus and ask yourself, is this situation under my control? You cannot clear the traffic, so railing against it is pointless. What is up to you is how you will handle the delay. Perhaps you call ahead to apologize for being late, and then you relax, knowing you've done what you can. Or say a coworker or acquaintance speaks poorly of you. It's natural to feel hurt, but again you can apply Epictetus' test. Can I control what this person thinks or says? No. Then why give their words the power to rob you of peace? As Epictetus observed, the insult itself doesn't disturb us. Our judgment that it is a terrible affront does. Blog, change that judgment. Decide it's not worth your anguish, and you remain undisturbed. By consistently reframing situations this way, we train ourselves to meet life with greater equilibrium. Little by little, the slings and arrows of fortune lose their sting, and we move through our days with more peace of mind. At the end of the day, Epictetus offers a kind of tough-minded hope. We cannot control everything that happens to us. Far from it. We will experience setbacks, injustice, heartbreak, and eventually our own end. Stoicism does not deny this reality or sugarcoat it. Instead, it says, there is something within you that can meet all this, something that can remain upright, compassionate, and free no matter what comes. Epictetus calls it our prohairesis, our faculty of choice, our moral purpose. That is what truly belongs to you. It is an inner kingdom of personal power that cannot be overthrown from without. By letting go of all that is beyond your grasp, you reclaim the full strength that is your birthright. Then, no matter what happens externally, your inner citadel remains unconquered. In closing, let us recall once more Epictetus' gentle injunction, a summary of the Stoic art of living. Make the best of what is in your power, and take the rest as it occurs. If we can remember this simple rule each day, we will find a new calm in the face of events. We will still do our very best in all we undertake, and still love the people around us wholeheartedly. But we will also, at a deep level, be prepared for whatever may happen. By aligning our will with the truth of what we can and cannot control, we align ourselves with reality itself. And reality, as Epictetus knew, always wins in the end. The Stoic seeks to win with it by yielding to its terms. In that yielding there is great strength, the strength Epictetus showed throughout his life, the strength of a free mind. So ask yourself, in moments of quiet, what actually belongs to me? The answer, according to Epictetus, is both humbling and empowering. Only your choices, only your mind. That is enough. It is everything. Guard it well, and you will remain untroubled and at peace, come what may.